Hello, I'm Gia Mills and I've been a celebrity makeup artist for 25 years. I'm also the founder of a sweat-friendly cosmetics brand, Skin in Motion. And I am fascinated about the world of beauty, about beauty politics, and the amazingness of what makeup can do for us. So today, in True Reflections, join me as I get to peek behind the curtain and find out what your favourite stars really feel about their appearance when the glare of the media is upon them. We explore what beauty and attractiveness really means to them, delving deeper into the truths that often go unnoticed. So who is joining me today? My guest today is not only an iconic singer, she is a marriage officer and now an author of her debut novel, Island Song, out to buy in bookshops. From the sun-drenched islands of St. Lucia in the 1950s, her novel weaves together a story of two sisters, one who leaves for a new life in London and the other who stays behind. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Pepsi DeMacque-Crockett.
Thank you. That's a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. You're good.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, welcome. I am
for having me.
So thrilled that I get to have a good old natter with you about all sorts of things. These are never long enough, these podcasts, because I just want to chat for ages, particularly your background is fascinating to me. So I remember when I was a girl going to Miss Seifert and you had the puffball skirts.
That's right.
And I was absolutely obsessed with you and Pepsi and
Shirley.
You and Shirley.
That happens.
Yes. But I was absolutely fascinated. And watching Wham, we were just talking, and when I was younger, I used to practice all the dance routines, etc. And watching you girls do your thing, it was so inspirational. And for younger girls listening, they probably kind of go, well, they don't know too much about you guys. But you were like the Rihanna and the Beyonce back in the day.
Yeah.
And you were, there weren't many women out there doing what you were doing in the band. It was absolutely fascinating.
Extraordinary. It's like watching, for instance, at the moment, seeing what Rita Ora is doing, for example. She's doing stuff for Primark and everything. Her energy's so vibrant and all. And it's like, I miss that kind of, throwing caution to the wind and being creative in that way.
Yeah.
I'm glad you practiced your dance.
I did practice I could always do it now. But do you think you could do it if you got up now to do your...
I'd have to really think about it. Yeah. And the thing is, when you're on your own and you're used to having someone next to you, it feels a little bit different. So we should practice together.
We should. Oh, that would be fun.
Yes, that would be fun.
But what I really want, we're going to go into your book, which I'm sort of halfway through and I'm absolutely loving your book.
Great.
It's beautiful. But first of all, I wouldn't be an 80s child if I didn't have to ask a few questions about back in the day in Wham. So talk to me about what makeup did you girls used to use? I've looked at lots of old pictures. You've got your frosted lipstick. What was the makeup back in that?
Well, Shirley was the frosted lipstick girl. She was the one with the pink gloss and all of that. It didn't quite work on me because if I put pink gloss on my lips, it just goes white. So it looks very, very strange. So I actually didn't wear a lot of makeup then, but when I did, it was all very much about dark eyes and, really rosy cheeks and some sort of lippy, I suppose. But the thing is, doing photo sessions with Shirley was always a little bit of a struggle because with the makeup artists back in the day, there weren't any of the array of colours for brown, black girls like me, So the makeup artists used to have to sort of blend it all together. Sometimes they got it right, sometimes they got it perfect, and sometimes they just had to keep trying again.
Well, where did you get your makeup if you did wear foundation?
Where I got do you know what? I actually don't know. I suppose it would be like Max Factor.
Okay.
And I'd try and do my best. And the thing is, away from the camera, I used to avoid wearing makeup. Shirley was always brilliant, always had the mascara, always had the bit, always pretty cute. And I was a bit of a tomboy. It was like, if I don't have to, I'll just put a baseball cap on.
Just hide.
So I was never really enamored with makeup, but I really appreciated having that photo session and getting the makeup right. And sometimes the lighting wouldn't be right. And Shirley, she's now a really fully fledged photographer. Back in the day,
she'd
be like, the light's not right on Pepsi. you know. So she would be in this light, this right light.
She'd sort of go and
She
down.
says, oh, Peps, you know, you need to get this light in your eyes and all the rest of it. And I suppose that I loved, because, you know, you'd see the picture and then you'll see the value of the makeup.
Yeah.
But I used to find it a little bit annoying, actually, having to make up.
Well, yes, it's interesting, the value of the makeup, because it is fascinating how makeup can transform not just how you're looking on the outside, but the inside as well. Because I guess when you're on stage, or when, you know, if you're in front of a camera, when you have that bit of makeup on, it can make you feel better. Did you feel you were seen enough? As in, if Shirley was standing in the, you know, in the sort of the right light, did you feel seen? Did you kind of start figuring out how to kind of get into that?
I felt seen. I felt seen. We were always working with professionals who was eager to sort of get the job right. And if we were ever not seen, Shirley and I would make sure we were seen.
Early
We were like, you know, real girl power. So I never really, I wouldn't say it was a major struggle, but there were moments I had to sort of stand up for myself. And having my pal Shirley, who was like my mirror, she said, Peps, no, you've got to add this. No, don't wear that blue eyeshadow, dear. It doesn't look quite right. You know, she was always very, not criticizing anything, but she was very much doing it for love. That looks lovely. She loved me in purple, like what you're wearing today. She
We're in our
loved that
block colours today.
I know,
I like
I'm in
that.
the blue, hence the cover of the book. I thought
It is very good.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to carry on to this.
Yeah.
But I guess the other question I'd have is, so did the boys wear much makeup? Did they do much to their hair? You know, back in the day, you had these, you know, Spandau ballets, etc. And those boys, the sort of true romantic-y vibe, wore makeup. Did they nick some of the makeup that you guys had?
I don't think Andrew ever really did the whole makeup thing,
Yeah.
you know, because he was sort of dark and handsome and pretty, and somehow there was this sort of like exotic thing about Andrew. Yog had the same thing, George had the same thing, but he was a bit partial to a little bit of mascara.
Did he?
Yeah.
You had good lashes.
Yeah.
In the videos, and they get close up, we definitely had good lashes.
He could do a little bit of something, and the whole blow drying of the hair, that was, you know, we used to sort of walk past his dressing room while he was having his blow dry done, and there was like smoke coming out of the room because of all the hairspray. It was crazy. Yeah.
I watched your documentary on the last Christmas making, and they were saying that you had to sort of stop for a while because his hair got a bit wet. And it was like, no, stop, now I've got to do his hair. So that would have been interesting, kind of the male sort of focus on his appearance. And he was really smart. He knew that getting the hair right, getting the look right, he got me, the young girls, just like literally going nuts about it.
And if you think about what's happening now, because what I've noticed, a lot of lads out there really embracing their curly hair. He would have loved it now.
Oh. But was it really curly?
It was really, really curly. And he knew what he had to do to make sure that it had that sort of like sweeping sort of kind of look about it. Yeah, he was very conscious of how he looked and how he presented himself.
The job, he did the job well. I had a major crush. But more, I think an area that I was really interested in, and what you just said earlier about not having enough choice on the kind of colour ranges. And I think it must have been really challenging, because I remember going to Boots and just not seeing enough colours, going, hang on, that fits sort of me. And even then, back in the day, they didn't get the colours right. I don't think the technology was good. I don't think the businesses didn't really sort of try and broaden it. And I think it was really sort of limiting. And did you find that frustrating? Did it make you cross? Did you think we need more?
All of that. I think as far as that change, it emerged in America, where the beauty companies realized that black chicks, people of color, I don't know if I like that term, but wear makeup.
Yeah.
And it's a big industry, and I think they're the ones that got it, and they started to change. And when I think of, like, say, for example, Estee Lauder, where they started to change their marketing, where you'd see a black girl, a sort of like Asian girl, and a white girl, and then all of a sudden you see like this complete international kind of marketing, and it was like there was this change that was happening. Which
When
was
did you see that, do you think? When do you think that you saw that happening, or it registered with you?
I think I started to see that when we went to America.
Yeah. Because MAC, Iman,
yes,
those certain brands that were really sort of starting to embrace.
Beverly Johnson, do you remember there was a black model, very like before Naomi Campbell. Her name was Beverly Johnson, and she became a poster child for a lot of the makeup companies.
Yeah.
And also there was a model that I used to revere, which I love. Her name was Pat Cleveland.
Okay.
And she was kind of light shade, and she was sassy, and she didn't actually look like she needed any makeup, and I loved her. It was more about her energy. So there was a lot for me coming from America opposed to here. And the thing about makeup for the black girl is that we are many shades of black.
I know.
Look at me. This is not black. This is brown, sort of like light tone.
Well, if you look at it in a sort of, palette,
Yes.
you've got the warm undertone, the cool undertone.
Yes.
Likewise with the whole spectrum of skin.
Right.
There are so many different tones. That's why I think so. I have a beauty brand, and I think it's so challenging to get the right colours, because you have to spend a lot of time, and the more colours you have, the more expensive it is to create them.
Right.
And are you sure? It's challenging for owning a brand, because we only have a limited amount of shades,
right,
but they cover a broad spectrum of skin tones each one,
right,
which is great because it's very sheer. But I imagine like the beauty brands back in the day when they were it's all about making the money. They just wanted to they were probably quite limited on what they wanted to sort of be offering.
Yes.
But I loved it when like the MACs came out, and they did, because you did get either like the Iman makeup, but that was for dark skin. It wasn't till like the MACs that they had the broad spectrum for everybody.
Yes.
So it was starting with sort of alabaster straight through to beautiful deep dark shades. Right. And it's lovely now that they've got so many more.
Absolutely.
And I think the young girls are so lucky that they're each skin tone is seen. They can identify with somebody, because I think it's really hard if you don't have someone who you can identify with from a beauty point of view that you can look up to. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, again, back in the day, you would see a colour that might be, you think would suit you, and then you'd put it on and there'll be like this white sort of chalkiness to it.
Ashiness.
When now I'm finding that it's like you say, the tones, it doesn't have that chalkiness, the colours are much more consistent.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, times have changed so much.
I think what then segues beautifully into your book, because I think, the book starts in St. Lucia, two sisters, and it slightly parallels, I guess, your parents who left St. Lucia, came to the UK, and I imagine the sort of, the challenges with, your mother coming here in the 50s, trying to kind of get makeup then must have been a nightmare.
I mean, I've got pictures of my mother, who is much more fairer skin than me.
Yeah.
And she used to love wearing sort of a powder, but that powder had that chalky white. So she looks really, really pale, with like.
And then you see the neck here.
Yes, exactly.
Always the contrast.
And it's like I've got family pictures where you see the skin tones of the women in the pictures. We'll put a bit of powder on, and they've got that sort of white, chalky colour to them, where their skin tones had this sort of warmer sort of tone to it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you refer to the book, I do make a point of explaining, for instance, that Agnes, who is sort of the character that follows through.
He comes to England like your mother.
England, yeah. And there is a term in St. Lucia, and the term is called, it's shabbin.
Yeah.
Shabbin, so I'm a shabbin.
What's a shabbin?
So a shabbin is like a mulatto. It looks like your mixture. It's like your, coffee with a little bit of milk. And with me, I'm referred to as a shabbin because of the tone of my skin, but not only that, is the colour of my eyes.
Okay.
So I have these sort of brown, hazily
eyes.
Sort of, yeah.
They're
so it's like there's this term for it. And the thing is, one thing also with the book and that era is that there was colorism.
Oh, Yeah.
You know, I mean, moving off from makeup, but we're talking about sort of color racism now, because it's all in the book.
It's a very, I'm really pleased you weave it in so beautifully in the book. It doesn't feel, it's not too heavy. You just touch on it in a really sort of natural, beautiful way.
I wanted it to be subtle because it can be very, very subtle. And the thing is, you know, like in my mother's era, to be fairer skinned meant that you had more of an opportunity. Can you believe it? Yeah. And that's within the community of the
Even
West
to
Indies.
Lucia, that was a case as well.
Exactly.
But I think because it was also sort of like a colony as well, it was the white Brits were revered. And you say in the book how, you know, you had to be more polite and revere the you know, the white leaders of the, you know, people that came in, the characters.
Well, the expats, they say.
And I love there's a quote in your book, page 29. There's a lovely, gorgeous woman in it, a white woman who's come over from England. Mrs. Chester. And it says, Mrs. Chester is different from you. Life is easier for her as a white person. She can move around the place, or the place. I love your Creole in here. I know my life is not the same. She is a white Brit and I'm coloured St. Lucian. I can't walk in her shoes, but I can still try and make something of my life. And I love that. It's such a beautiful, it sort of encapsulates a lot about sort of the narrative of the story. And it's like, you know, you saw the white people as ones who life was easier and it was more challenging. And I think how you know, when you come to England, when Agnes comes to England and the challenges she will face when she comes to deal with the kind of the white supremacy, it's very difficult. What was the inspiration for the book, and how did you kind of want to,
oh my goodness,
what were your messages?
What was the inspiration? That's a really, really big question for me, because there's a lot of inspiration. So first of all, we'll go back to the subtlety of those tones, as it were. We're talking about makeup. So this tones is because I grew up in London. I grew up in West London. My playground was the streets. I'm an urbanite. I grew up in the Harrow Road. My playground was Ladbroke Grove, you know, and I'd swan into Maida Vale maybe sometimes. But, you know, we grew up on the streets in a West Indian community. And there were moments things were said subtly. You know, I do find that racism in England is subtle. It's just little things that can be said. And I remember as a child, like, well, in fact, going to school, I most probably was about 13 or 14, being on the bus, and this little white lady sat next to me, and she said to me, "What time do you have, dear?" And I had my watch, and I said, "Oh, it's 3:30. She said to me, "Oh, you speak very well." And I was like, how am I supposed to speak? I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And then it was like, how am I different from her? And it's like, well, I am different from her because my family's from a different place. I'm born here, but what made her say that? So it's these kind of subtle remarks. Oh, you're all right. They're not good, but you're all right.
I think it's
so. It's really.
Do you think the media created a lot of that misconception about how, you know, people from different nationalities, different countries, they created that sort of uncomfortableness, and they were prejudiced because they were taught something different because of the media. And I think now people, you know, because everyone is represented so much more, you wouldn't even think that. But I think back in the day, the media liked to control, because keeping that white sort of, you know, leaders, they could keep more control by sort of.
Well, first and foremost, I will say, like, in researching the book, what I discovered was that the people of England were not prepared for those who came. They weren't actually really told that these people are from the Commonwealth, they have a British passport, and we've asked them to come to help to rebuild the country. There might have been things that were said, but the people of England was like, what are they doing here? When you ask that question, it means that they don't know, they don't understand. So you've got to understand, what I understand is, I understand the reaction because of the lack of knowledge.
Because the media wasn't educating them.
Exactly. The government wasn't educating.
Yeah.
So when the lights of my father and my mother came over, they were like they were aliens. You know, like the Americans refer to non-Americans as aliens. It was like, so what are you doing here, taking all our jobs? But guess what? There were nurses, folks that worked on the transport were recruited in their own country to come
because you
to
talk
England.
about that in the book.
Yes.
About she was really excited about Agnes coming over to the UK, because she was, I imagine at the time, people in St Lucia were like, oh, this is great, they want us to come over, they want us to help. But little did they know that actually the Brits weren't actually told why you're coming, what you're bringing, that you're part of the Commonwealth. I think non-Brits understood that, all the other Commonwealth countries, but we weren't educated on that in the UK. And I think, you know, we can look back and be really cross with them, etc. But actually, I think what's so lovely about your book is you're bringing it to light, but in such a beautiful way. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
And it's the language in it is absolutely beautiful, and you challenge and explore really difficult subjects, but in a really light, beautiful way, and the characters really jump out to the page. Did you have anyone that you were kind of picturing in your head, anyone that you've ever met? Who were the two sisters?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sort of those two sisters. There's element of myself in both of them. Agnes was inspired by my mother, who was very feisty, very courageous, very resilient, and Ella was inspired by my Auntie Emma, who was very quiet, very insular. She liked to sew. She came to England, hated it, and went back to St Lucia. And she became a matriarch. She was a real matriarch in the village of Canaries. So Canaries, the village that I mentioned, is actually a real place. So she went back.
Because you live, do you live in Canaries now?
Well, I live north of the island. So Canaries is sort of west coast, south of the island. So, but I do go and visit.
Yeah.
So the book is inspired by stories I've heard that are incomplete, things that I've made up, true events, and elements of different characters in my family.
But it does come through. I was with any of your family members like, oh, I kind of recognise that. And I think but I think how you kind of like lay it all out. And I like the relationship between the two sisters and how you bring that out, and the different characters. And I love the way with Mrs. Chester, who is this very sort of nervous, timid white lady, and her relationship with Agnes, how a female bond happens. And I love how that sort of develops, the story develops, and that kind of love. And I think is that sort of slightly representative of you and Shirley at all?
That's been asked of me before. It isn't actually. It's a story that my mother had told me. She said, I was a nanny for a white lady, and I used to look after their children. But she never gave me any more than that. I didn't really know. And I thought, you know, what about that relationship between a young St. Lucian woman and this white lady who's going through her own trauma, her own sort of mental health, really? Yeah. How that bond would develop. And the thing is, you mentioned Shirley. Shirley actually was one of the reasons I started to write the book as well, because she was very much, Pepsi, why did your family come? Why did they leave the palm trees and the sunshine to come to dreary old England? And it was, you know, and I would try and explain, but I didn't really know why until I started researching and talking to my family members, my aunts who live in St. Lucia, that I was able to explain. So, you know, this is a book for Shirley and those that explaining a lot of why that happened. And at the end of the day, it was about survival, it's about family, it was about care, you know, trying to find a way to have a comfortable life the best way you could. And living in Canaries, it was really difficult. So in 1948, like for instance with the whole Windrush thing and those guys that fought in the war, you know, their lives were opened up by coming to England and Germany and the other countries that they fought in, and they met people that they'd never meet in Canaries. So their worlds open up. They went back home after the war, and there was nothing. There was no work.
Really
They
poor.
weren't given land. Do you know, it was so to get the opportunity of paying £28, 10 shillings at the time, to have a berth on a boat, it was like, I'm going, you know, and that's where it kind of began, the sort of influx of West Indians, people from the Commonwealth arriving in England. So it's this thing of, you know, wanting to have a life, a secure life, the best way that you possibly can.
Thank goodness they did come over, because then that allowed, you know, you then disrupted the, you know, if the women back in St. Lucia in the 50s had known that their friend was coming over and their daughter would be in Wham, which became a worldwide sensation.
Yes.
And it's great because in some ways it does say that coming over, you had opportunity. And you had opportunity to go, this isn't, you know, breaking the mold, doing things that hadn't normally been done. And you two as these two incredible women in this band with two men, it wasn't just a girl band, you know, historically it was, you know, you never have them mixed together so much. But you girls kind of stood up, and as growing up as a young girl, it was wonderful to see you just being badass and just getting on with being fussy.
I just think that, you know, it's like, it's incredible when someone who looks at us and has that idea of who we were. Yeah, we did feel badass on occasion, but like our own parents, we were doing a job.
Yeah,
we were kind of getting on with it. And the thing is, you know, I wanted to be a backing singer long before I joined Wham. I was like doing sessions for nothing, trying to find my way, doing my little hustle. So this was like a real big dream come true. And trying to explain that to my parents was really difficult. But what changed it was Top of the Pops.
Oh my gosh.
You know, Thursday night, watching Top of the Pops. It's like, oh, that's what you've been doing. You know, and I could never explain, Mom, I want to sing and dance. It's like, what's that?
Yeah.
That's not a job.
It's right, yes, I imagine, you know, it's like what models used to be seen in not such a sort of revered light as they are now. And Top of the Pops was a major thing. And that's where, as you know, as a young girl, that's where you got your beauty, your fashion, your everything, your cues from. So what you guys were sort of sitting at backstage or pottering around various shops in, you know, Ladbroke Grove or wherever, going, well, that would be nice on, you know, on stage.
Right.
All these things that you guys decided, we then saw and went out and bought and copied and tried to sort of get that look. So it was, you know, you probably didn't realise the influence you had there.
I don't think so. But then again, I say that, but years later when you meet, like, you know, a beautiful brown girl especially who says, oh my gosh, I used to watch you and I wanted to be you. How did you do, you know, to be able to inspire that way as well. And for Shirley too, you know, how did you meet boys? How do you know, so there's that whole story. But while you're doing it, you don't think that. You're just sort of doing your job. You know, Shirley and I were very professional in the way that we conducted ourselves, I have to say.
Tell me what.
Yeah, no, but we knew. So, for instance, there was Wham, who was George and Andrew, which included in the band Pepsi and Shirley. But Wham was George and Andrew, and we always knew that. So if we were to think otherwise, that would have been really unhealthy.
Yeah, and that kept the relationship strong between you because you had you knew where you were, which is probably challenging in a lot of bands and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'd love to know a bit more about as well is that you then disappeared for a large period of time. I hadn't sort of seen you until you came back on the White Christmas documentary.
Wow.
And what were you doing in that time?
Oh my gosh, life. That's what we were doing. We were kind of getting on with life.
You were traveling a bit.
Yeah. So Shirley and I sort of decided to call it a day. Shirley wanted to get on with her creating her family, which I was all for, because she had struggled for very many years with endometriosis, and she never thought she'd have children at all. But look, she's got 2 beautiful babies and a lovely family, and I love them all.
Yeah.
And then it was a case of, who am I, Peps? I had to actually ask myself that question. Because
you, I mean, I haven't had children and tried very hard and it didn't work. And I think I read about, with you as well. So I guess you make different choices in life because of it.
Well, I mean, because I tried to have babies and it didn't happen, the choice was kind of made for me.
Yeah.
I had to look at my life in a different way, which also having the support of Shirley with all of that. There were moments that I didn't share with her actually, because I think she would have found it a bit too traumatic because of what she was going through. So we were going through our own thing all at the same time. So I had to actually ask myself the question, okay, fine. If I'm not in front of the camera with Wham, if I'm not Pepsi and Shirley, who am I? What am I going to do next? What do I want to do anything next? So what came to me was like, I always wanted to act. I always wanted to be on the stage, like learn lines and learn a script and things like that. So one needs to be careful what one asks for, right? Sometimes, yeah. So by me asking that of myself, I kind of manifested this other opportunity to go into musical theatre, which I did. I did that for a short time, but then I got bored. I love the whole...
Why did you get bored?
I love the rehearsal.
Yeah.
I love the whole thing about finding the character and like learning your lines and moving from one set to the next and all. I loved all that. And then the show goes up and then you do it every single night. And then really at the end of the day, you have to rely on the audience. What kind of audience it's going to be. How are they going to react to the same lines you've been doing for the past 2-3 weeks or whatever. And then I got kind of, I don't know if I can keep this up, And again, you have to be careful what you ask for because I'm very good at manifesting.
Oh, good. I need to ask you about that. We might have to do a separate session on manifesting.
So it was like, and then there was a time my mother was passing away and that was awful. And that was another question, who am I and all the rest of it. And then during all that time, it's like, I want to know what love is. I really, truly want to know what love is, even if it's for myself or love of someone else. And that's when I met my husband, James.
You are a good manifestor. I'm very impressed.
I know. So I'm cutting a lot out here, but these are the most important points. And we got together and we eventually lived in New Zealand.
New Zealand?
New Zealand, I know.
Wow, that's a long way to kind of escape the world.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating, then you guys have ended up in St. Lucia. So you've kind of gone full circle back to your kind of family heritage.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what helped you, to a certain extent, inspire the book to go back to live in your sort of, where your parents were.
But I'll go back to another inspiration very quickly. My husband's from Norfolk. We lived in New Zealand, so it was like we didn't want to go back to London, so we went back to Norwich. We lived in Norwich for a little while, and there was a brand new mall that opened up, and there was a shop, Hotel Chocolat, had opened up, and at the weekend I'd go in there and buy myself like 5 chocolate bars.
It's good.
Yeah.
I opened that for you in the street on the way
And on the cover of the chocolate bar it said cocoa from St. Lucia, and I'd go home and say, this is from St. Lucia, and he's like, look, I really think you should think about going back.
Yeah.
And my husband had worked in the Caribbean, or he knew more about the Caribbean than I did. So anyway, we made plans and we went back, and it was like, it's actually very nice here.
It is. I mean, yes.
Very, very nice here.
Very
long story short, again, it ended up my husband started to work there, and then we decided, you know what, let's pack everything up and come and live. So talk about full circle. So we ended up, now I live in St. Lucia.
It's beautiful. And, you've got your book and you're sort of coming, you're re-emerging kind of from the water, from the sort of crystal clear, beautiful waters that you describe in the book. And you're suddenly, back in the UK a little bit. Are you excited? Is there anything you want to do in the UK? Go on any shows? Do any more musical theatre? Go on any reality shows? Would you go on a reality show?
No, I don't. I just don't think I'd be rubbish. I really would be rubbish. I think I'd get into trouble because I really speak my mind. And I would hate to embarrass my parents. Well, not my parents, they're not here, but my family. And for instance, Strictly, I know I'd fall over. I'd rub it. Anyway, I've been asked a few times, but it's something that I don't want to do. What I want to do is continue writing books.
I think you've got a magical voice that comes through. And I've been captivated when I started reading it.
Oh, wonderful.
And I think it's sort of, can you please carry on writing? Because I would love you to still write it.
I will. I'll do it just for you.
Because how does it feel? Because this is, because you did a book before with Shirley.
Yes.
And now this is you all by yourself. How does it feel to sort of not have your kind of sidekick with you doing all this stuff? Because I guess you've normally got each other to kind of support each other.
Well, it looks like that she might not be around, my dear Shirley, but she is. She's a real, like, Pepsi, Island Song. I mean, she went on holiday and took it with her. And, she's been doing some posting and she says she's so proud of me. So she's really there at my side with it. But yes, this is me on my own, doing my thing. Inspired by her, inspired by life.
And if you're going to do some of your amazing manifesting, what would you like to manifest as the next chapter? Sorry, that sounds so cliched, but what would you like to manifest though as your next chapter? Who's Pepsi going to be next?
Who's Pepsi going to be? I think I've started something that I want to continue. I love the word author behind my name. And you can only become an author if you've actually got a hardback book.
Yes.
A hardback book. The hardback.
Even this makes me enjoy reading it with the
and
pictures.
there's a lot of
the cover is beautiful.
analogy here. This is all the story in one picture.
Yes.
The parrot is the mascot of St. Lucia. The boat is Agnes's father's boat. And
Is that the swing skirt?
This is the little swing skirt, was like it. And this is Agnes looking out onto the Atlantic, looking towards England.
Well, it just makes, when just looking at the cover, gives you that lovely sort of like, being in England when it's not as sunny like this. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think the other question I need to ask you is, you just look so fresh, healthy, and glowing. What products do you use? What's your go-to products that you use makeup-wise?
I don't use a lot of products. I use a really nice, just a light powder by MAC. I love a good mascara.
Yeah.
But then again, I've got so many mascara.
I've got another one to give you today.
Really?
Yes.
I'm trying to find that perfect one.
What is the perfect mascara? What does
just as you put it on and it glides and everything just sort of opens up.
Okay.
But somehow I've got some and it just gets a bit gloopy.
You have to replace them a lot. If you've got them for more than about a month or so, they do kind of dry out. You know when you first get the new mascara and you put it on and you're like, oh, this is a good one.
I know.
But then they do dry out.
And in St. Lucia, everything's warm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, humidity probably isn't the best for. And do you like a waterproof mascara or a non-waterproof?
A non-waterproof mascara.
Okay.
And recently, I've discovered the is it Rose Gold by Charlotte
Tilbury,
which is great. I've got a little bit on today.
They look beautiful.
Thank you very much.
That's the cream.
Yeah, really,
great.
that's a new discovery. And I use this sort of Clarins Lip Protector. And I've got all the colours of that, and it's really like this lovely balm and everything. And in St. Lucia, I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic place I go and have a facial about every couple of months, because like with the sunblock and the creams and the heat, it all gets a bit ugh.
Pepsi, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to meet you.
This is such a great conversation, an important one, so thank you.
Massive thank you to Pepsi DeMacque-Crockett. You can get your hands on her book, highly recommended, Island Song, wherever you buy your books from. It's a perfect addition to any reading list. So that is it for True Reflections this week. If you enjoyed today's episode, please click follow wherever you're watching or listening. You can find me across your social media by searching at True Reflections Podcast. And you can also explore how Skin in Motion cosmetics range can help boost your confidence at skin.in.motion. I'll be back next week with another celebrity to talk through their beauty experiences, their favourite products, and delve deeper into the ideals of how beauty shapes not just our physical appearance, but also the core of our identities. Until next week, goodbye.